Joe Biden is the presumptive Democratic nominee for president in the 2020 election. His first serious test in this role will be who he taps as his running mate. Names like Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren are frequently floated by politicos in the establishment media. They also top the betting odds and polls. This is not surprising, given the fact that all three have substantial name recognition, much of it gained by the important campaigns they ran in the Democratic primary race. But name recognition is not necessarily something that Biden either wants or needs in a running mate. He has plenty of it all on his own. What Biden does need in a running mate is someone who will help unify a potentially fractured party and drive voters to the polls. In this video, I'll suggest a list of 5 alternative choices that I believe Biden and his team ought to seriously consider. So, who made the list? Question Time Politics is brought to you by the patrons. Shout out to Ian Sampson, Thomas Bahozevich, Kendall Lowe, Zach Wheeler, Brendan, and the incomparable John Lang. And special thanks to top contributors Sergio Guerrero, Emil Stierbeck-Moller, Thomas Lamser, Victor Holmberg, Torch Kumero, Ewan Oliver, and C-Mac. If you too would like to support this channel, head on over to patreon.com/questiontime. Joe Biden will almost certainly be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States. This is true despite rumor mill speculation that the scandal-laden presumptive nominee might take Tara Reade's advice and drop out of the election. This scenario fuels plenty of fantastical wish thinking for commentators of all political stripes. One writer for Jacobin imagines that if Biden drops out, he should be replaced by Bernie Sanders. An opinion writer for The Hill imagines Biden being replaced with Hillary Clinton, who did not even run in 2020, and as her running mate, who else? Barack Obama, who has already served 2 terms as president. Others have imagined recently popularized Andrew Cuomo as a replacement for Biden. And no doubt President Trump may have fantasies of his own. But while it's not impossible that Biden drops out, it is extremely unlikely. We should all get used to the idea that Biden's going to lead the Democratic ticket and turn our thoughts to who will share that ticket with him. Biden, his campaign, and close allies have been clear about a number of qualities he wants to see in a potential VP. He has promised to choose a woman, he is strongly considering a person of color, he seems to want someone younger, not viewed as a political insider. He wants someone who is prepared to step into the role of the presidency on day one. And he wants someone who is simpatico with him, philosophically. This is a perfectly reasonable list, but at least 2 important qualifications are clearly missing. If Biden's choice is to help unify Democrats and push the anti-Trump coalition to the polls. First, Joe Biden's VP pick should probably do something to shore up his support amongst non-white voters. This includes Latinos generally and other non-white voters under 45 who seem to prefer Bernie Sanders in the early primary contests. It also includes black voters over 45 who clearly made Biden their top choice. Even though black voters overall preferred Biden in the primaries, this doesn't mean that this group will be mobilized sufficiently to beat Trump in the general election. As well-publicized polls show, Biden trails Trump in terms of enthusiasm. And this certainly matters when it comes to generally Democratic voters who are not reliable anti-Trump voters. Political forecaster Rachel Beitkoffer and political scientist Davin Phoenix agree that while whites, especially college-educated whites, have demonstrated strong voter turnout in the Trump era, black and Latino turnout increases post-Trump have been far more modest. So while liberal white people have been, generally speaking, reliable anti-Trump voters, non-whites have been less reliably motivated to rebuke Trump at the ballot box. An ideal Biden running mate should thus be one that bolsters his support amongst non-whites sufficiently to increase their voter turnout. Second, Biden's running mate should shore up the left flank of the party. Moderates and progressives alike have written and spoken about the rifts formed during the 2016 Democratic primary, but considerably less talked about is how to bring the voting blocs together. Biden himself is an ideal choice for bringing undecided moderates into the fold. But if progressives vote for a third party or fail to vote at all, Biden could very well find himself in dire straits. A substantial portion of potential Democratic voters, around 2/5 to 1/3, are essentially Bernie-crats. Democratic Socialists or left-wing independents, or very liberal Democrats who do not necessarily see a reason to vote for Joe Biden. Biden must do work to win these voters over. Securing Bernie's endorsement and forming Biden-Sanders policy task forces is certainly a great first step. But if Biden does not prove that progressives will have a substantial place in his administration, Bernie-crat voters may easily demonstrate their dissatisfaction by withholding their support. So while Biden may want a simpatico minority woman who is a young outsider and also ready to be president on day one, what he really needs is someone who will win over progressives and excite people of color. There are also a host of other important considerations. It might also be nice for Biden to have someone who can do better with his fundraising, as he lagged on this in the Democratic primary, or someone from a critical swing state. An ideal choice should also be scandal-free, popular, and presently not occupying a vulnerable but essential seat for Democrats. For example, Jeanne Shaheen, who early in the primary race Biden pointed to as a potential running mate, occupies a Democratic Senate seat that would become vulnerable if she joined his presidential ticket. That's not an ideal situation. Clearly, no human being can satisfy all of the criteria. No one who is popular and 100% ready to be president is at the same time a young, fresh new face who does not occupy a critical position for Democrats. No one is perfectly simpatico with Biden's ideology and also likely to win over discerning progressive voters. Even among top contenders for the VP slot, frequently touted advantages are not always what they are cracked up to be. Elizabeth Warren is seen as a potential handout to the left, but she has become deeply unpopular amongst Bernie loyalists for seeming to sandbag him during the primary race. Klobuchar is seen as a regional favorite who could help secure the Midwest, but despite her popularity in Minnesota, she was never a top primary contender in nearby states like Wisconsin and Michigan. Kamala Harris, because she is black herself and because she criticized Biden for his past support for busing, is seen as a good choice to lock down the black vote. But during the primaries, she failed to ever secure more support amongst blacks than either Biden or Bernie Sanders, in part, one assumes, because of her tough-on-crime policies as a prosecutor. That all said, there are some potential running mates that Biden could tap, who are highly likely to shore up progressive support and drive non-whites to the polls. So without further ado, let's get into my list. First up is Bernie Sanders. Sanders is, without a doubt, the highest profile Democrat who has received essentially zero speculation as a potential running mate for Joe Biden. There are obvious reasons for that. Joe Biden has promised to pick a woman, he'll be well served by a person of color, he has said he wants someone who is philosophically simpatico, and he suggested that he wants to usher in a new generation of Democratic leaders. Bernie Sanders is clearly none of those things. He's an old white man who represents the exact opposite wing of Democratic voters. Beyond that, if offered the job, Bernie probably wouldn't take it. He almost certainly has more power as a senator and as the informal leader of the progressive movement. Were he Joe Biden's VP, he would be an employee of the Biden administration, with no real power and not even the ability to speak out as a vocal opponent of controversially conservative choices Biden might make as president. But therein lies the potential cleverness of offering Sanders the job. If Biden offers Sanders the role, progressives would see that he is serious about taking progressives seriously, and they could hardly blame him when Sanders inevitably turns the offer down. So even a fake offer might have a substantial effect. Despite the unlikeliness, were Sanders to somehow find himself on Biden's ticket, there would be some serious advantages for Team Biden. Sanders' popularity amongst young people and Latinos helps to turn out voters who must be inspired to the polls. His credibility amongst progressives is second to none. As a US Senator, his experience is substantial, as is his base of support. He took second place in the 2016 and 2020 presidential primaries, and YouGov ranks him as the third most popular Democrat in the country, just behind Barack Obama and Jimmy Carter. Sanders is not simpatico with Biden's philosophy, but the two do apparently get along on a personal level, and that's not a meaningless advantage. Nor would be the substantial fundraising advantage Bernie brings to the table. While Biden is likely to secure significant funds from Washington insiders now that his popular competition is out of the way, Bernie's grassroots fundraising broke records. His campaign raised well over $200 million, mainly from small individual contributions. The fact that the most popular Democrat in the country outside of former presidents has not been more talked about as a potential running mate speaks volumes. It should be a demonstration of the biases of the media, but in fact, I think it's more a case of the media's accurate assessment of the unfortunate realities of the Democratic Party. The party doesn't want Sanders, voters be damned, and there's basically no chance that Biden will ever consider selecting him. But there are at least two very good reasons not to select Sanders. He's not a woman, as Biden has promised, and he is not a person of color, which really ought to be a serious consideration if Biden is to drive minorities to the polls. Fortunately for all with identity politics top of mind, all four of the other people on my list happen to be women of color. Next up, we have Nina Turner. If ever there was a Bernie loyalist sure to win over his supporters, Turner is that woman. In 2017, Turner became the president and public face of Our Revolution, the progressive political action organization that spun out from Bernie's 2016 campaign. She was no doubt Bernie's most powerful surrogate during the 2020 campaign. In my opinion, she is also amongst the most talented public speakers in America today.
There's an African proverb that says that many hands make for light work. Can I see the hands? Can you raise your hands? All over, can you raise your hands? With these hands, we're going to transform this country in a way that they've never seen before. With these hands, we will have Medicare for all. With these hands, we will have college for all. With these hands, we will make sure that the working poor and barely middle class in this country have a system that answers to them. With these hands, we will rise.
A progressive favorite, Turner was offered the VP slot by the Green Party in 2015 and has a long history of challenging the political establishment as an outsider in Ohio politics. Certainly, being a native in a traditional swing state is also a plus for a potential running mate. So should her experience in media, as she's been a frequent contributor on CNN. There are, of course, drawbacks to Turner as a selection. The highest elected office she's ever held is state senator, and in that role she also served as minority whip. But she's never been electorally tested on a national scale, and as far as I can tell, there isn't even nationwide polling available to check her name recognition or favorability. It's also hard to argue that she's experienced enough to step into the role of the presidency on day one. And like any progressive with strong support from voters of the left, she's unlikely to have a philosophy that is simpatico with Joe Biden. Stacey Abrams was the very first name that Joe Biden floated as a potential running mate, even before he declared his candidacy in the 2020 Democratic primary. But for many, she's become a less popular choice as names of his former primary challengers have floated to the top of contention. Still, at least according to one poll amongst black voters, Abrams is more popular than Kamala Harris, the choice who politicos often point to as a lock for winning over black voters. Harris has a mixed record as a prosecutor, one that unfortunately includes prosecuting mothers for child truancy issues and jailing people for possession of a drug that she herself boasted about using in an interview on The Breakfast Club. Abrams, on the other hand, has been a major advocate for community policing, the elimination of cash bail, and the elimination of jail time for simple possession. She's also perhaps the best-known advocate for ending voter suppression, and Democrats frequently cite her Georgia gubernatorial race as a prime example, sometimes asserting that she would have won if it weren't for racially motivated voter suppression. A claim that is, by the way, not necessarily untrue, but certainly not provable. At any rate, if you want to put a black woman on the ticket to win over black voters, it helps if that woman is also consistently right on black issues, by which I mean shares the values of a majority of black voters. Beyond black voters, Abrams is also a fairly solid choice for progressives. She earned the endorsement of Bernie Sanders in her Democratic primary race for governor, as well as support from groups like Our Revolution, Democracy for America, the Working Families Party, and the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. While Abrams is probably a less exciting choice for progressives than, say, Nina Turner, she's probably an easier compromise choice for the left and the middle. Some have hailed her as a progressive champion or a radical liberal, while others have said that she has a balanced view on the issues and the ability to reach across the aisle. So Abrams might simultaneously satisfy progressives and satiate Biden's need for a simpatico running mate. She's also, of course, popular in her home state of Georgia, which could easily throw the state into serious contention for the presidential race. Like Nina Turner, however, Abrams' biggest downside is political experience. Had she won that Georgia gubernatorial race, there would be no doubt that she's occupied a high enough office to become president. As it stands, the highest elected office she's held is as minority leader in the Georgia House of Representatives. But are there any black women popular amongst progressives who come from a swing state and have actually served at a national level? Well, how about the next person on this list, Ayanna Pressley? While Ayanna Pressley currently serves as the U.S. Representative for Massachusetts' 7th Congressional District, she was actually born in Cincinnati, Ohio, making the traditional bellwether state technically her home. This despite the fact that she was mainly raised in Chicago, Illinois. Pressley was the first black woman to be elected to Boston City Council and the first black woman elected to represent Massachusetts in Congress. A prominent progressive supporter of policies like the Green New Deal and Medicare for All, she's the oldest and most politically experienced member of the Squad. She's also gained serious credibility amongst progressives and minorities, introducing a criminal justice reform resolution that would decriminalize sex work, abolish cash bail, legalize weed, abolish capital punishment and solitary confinement, and also reduce the US prison population by more than 80%. She might also be seen as a more palatable progressive for moderate voters, since during the 2020 presidential primary she endorsed Warren, not Sanders. Sure, Pressley is not a governor or a senator, but she is a black US congresswoman with serious progressive support and significant visibility. She may have only assumed a federal office for the first time in January of 2019, but if Biden wants to usher in the next generation of Democratic leaders, he's not going to pick someone with the experience of a Maxine Waters. Sure, it's easy to see why AOC or Ilhan Omar are too young for the vice presidency, but why ignore a Squad member in her 40s? Which brings us to Rashida Tlaib, U.S. Representative for Michigan's 13th Congressional District, and before that a member of the Michigan House of Representatives from 2009 to 2014. As the first Palestinian woman to serve in Congress, and one of the first 2 Muslim women to be elected to Congress, Tlaib safely satisfies the identity politics criterion, even if she is neither black nor Latina. Hailing from Michigan, she may pose an advantage in critical Midwestern states. And as the daughter of an assembly line worker for Ford Motor Company, she might be well suited to speak to the issues of disgruntled blue-collar voters in the Rust Belt. Tlaib also has substantial ties to the progressive movement, as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and boasting endorsements from groups like Justice Democrats, Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and People for Bernie. She was also a supporter of Bernie Sanders in the primary race. Tlaib also has a track record that might have appeal for Biden supporters, as she was one of the strongest advocates for the impeachment of Donald Trump. She introduced a resolution calling for an impeachment inquiry. She also penned an op-ed for the Detroit Free Press in early 2019, which pointed out impeachable offenses, including grounds often ignored by other pro-impeachment Democrats, like his alleged violation of the Emoluments Clause. With Rashida Tlaib's relatively high-profile anti-Trump experience and strong support amongst progressives, it's perhaps a bit surprising that her name has been absent from virtually all mainstream conversations about potential VPs. Aside from the 3 prominent senators I've already referred to, the mainstream press has put forth plenty of lesser-known Democrats as potential VP picks for Joe Biden. There's U.S. Senator from Illinois Tammy Duckworth, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, U.S. Senator from Nevada Catherine Cortez Masto, U.S. Representative from Florida Val Demings, and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Most of these potential choices would likely appease identity politics-focused minority voters, as would the often discussed wildcard choice of Michelle Obama, which by the way is not going to happen. As I've argued in this video, it would be wise for Biden's team to select someone who appeals to non-white voters, and a non-white running mate will likely, although not necessarily, have that effect. So if the names discussed in the mainstream press are a reflection of the considerations of Team Biden, they're doing a good job of at least attempting to reach out to non-white voters. But the same cannot be said about 2 other widely overlapping groups, progressives and young people. If Biden shuns the Ayanna Presleys and Nina Turners, he does so at his peril. He certainly should be working to appeal to Latinos and blacks. But if the left flank of the party has not also made Biden's list of groups to appeal to, it seems reasonable to ask, who made the list?
Space is going to be, it's going to be the future. We're now the leader in space. I call it the super duper missile.